Typhoon Shanshan battering the Kagoshima Prefecture on today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for August 28th. So the wide world of tropics is busy. In the Pacific, we have 3 tropical storms and Typhoon Shanshan, which reached Category 4 status earlier on, currently with winds of 130 miles per hour, although it's possible that the storm has now peaked. We are still code red for it though. It is a very dangerous storm, so close to some big populations. In the Atlantic, day 89 of hurricane season, and we've got 2 areas of interest that we've designated, although both of them are low chance right now. You remember the one on the left was at 30% yesterday. We'll put it back down to 10%, along with one behind it there that may have a shot of developing next week. Day 106 in the Eastern Pacific, and we've now got a trio of tropical storms, Gilmer, Hone and Hector. Of course, Gilmer was the standout storm of these. Of course, Hone, for its own reasons as well, also reached hurricane status too, but both now at a fairly equal intensity each. And this is Shanshan, and another area of interest that we've designated to its south in the Philippine Sea, which could develop as it moves up and squeaks past the storm off to its east. But Shanshan, of course, the main feature there, very powerful storm, pressure in the 930s. And in the North Indian Ocean, almost formed now, that tropical disturbance over land in western India. It will be emerging over water in the next 24 hours or so. Is expected to strengthen into a tropical storm and possibly get to 50 mile per hour winds. 30% over there in the Bay of Bengal as well for another potential system. Southwest Indian Ocean, awfully quiet now. A few little thunderstorms there over the Seychelles, but after that tropical depression last week, it's back to its quiet self. So this is Shanshan. It's so close to these land areas. Typhoon warning for the whole of the Kagoshima region now. It is 68 kilometers from the island of Akushikijima, 72 from Kikaijima, 138 from Yakuhima, 288 from Kagoshima, the city, and 505 from Fukuoka further north. Gale advisory in effect for large parts of Kyushu as well, extending just a little bit into the other islands too, and that will probably spread, of course, as the storm continues to edge further north. Well, its direction of travel has become a bit of a question mark in the last few frames. You can clearly see that it's taken on a substantial easterly jog there, which was unexpected. Whether that's going to continue or not is a big question mark, but you can clearly see destabilization of the storm's eye as that has been happening. Shanshan's made the mistake of stalling for too long in this area, and it is now looks like it's starting to pay the price with those cloud tops fading away and the eye really clouding over in those last few frames. Water vapor imagery showing it best there as it starts to drift just northeastwards there away from the island at the Amami Island. So far we've had maximum winds of 70 miles per hour on those islands, at least recorded at a station, with wind gusts of 99 miles per hour. And there it is once again on the other imagery. Those cloud tops look like they're holding on, maybe the western side looking weak. There's the radar, really extraordinary movement there in those last few frames, been stalling and hovering around east-northeast just there. Whether it will turn back again is a big question, very uncertain forecast. There's the Eastern Pacific storms, all 3 of them there, and Hawaii sandwiched in between all of that. It's actually Hector that's got the most cloud tops, Hone a close second, and Gilmer really struggling now in a distant third. Gilmer obviously looked really good just over about 36 hours ago now, but it deteriorated so quickly. This is Hone that we're looking at now, moving westwards, and clearly got some issues there, probably wind shear off to its west. It's really trying to push back against that, and actually is not doing too bad. It is holding its own. You can clearly see with that convection. This is Gilmer in the middle of the three systems, and you can see it's much smaller. It's just got a little bit of convection blowing up and around it. National Hurricane Center have been slow to weaken the storm, mainly due to constraints at first, but I expect now they'll probably want to lower it at least down to 60. And this is Hector. These are all at the same scale, these images, so you can clearly see the size difference. The northern side of Hector blowing up very large amounts of convection, quite deep as well, towards the -80s, and so they bumped up the intensity back up to 50 miles per hour at their last advisory. Here's the US East Coast, and there's some storms blowing up across the Great Lakes region today, but apart from that, nothing much going on. In the Caribbean, there's quite a bit of activity there with cloud cover and a tiny little system off the top northeast there of that image, which has caught some people's attention. ASCAP passed there a few hours ago. It did see some significant winds up to about 25-30 miles per hour, but no signs of a circulation. Here's the coast of Africa, some storms just about to move off the coast there, thunderstorms that is. Eastern Pacific getting quite stormy over there as well, off the coast of Mexico out to sea, but nothing's going to form out of that little system out east. There's Hector bringing up the rear of those three storms that are now parading out over the open Pacific, apart from Hawaii of course. And then there's Gilmer and Hone. Very small chances that Gilmer will affect Hawaii, but there is a non-zero chance. It's about 5% for the Hawaiian Islands right now for tropical storm force winds. Visible imagery into the Western Pacific, Shanshan of course right at the top of that picture now, and a lot of big masses of clouds around it as well towards its south into the Philippine Sea. Bay of Bengal region and Indochina, a few storms blowing up here and there, monsoonal showers more than anything, and this is the system that's about to enter the Arabian Sea along the border with India and Pakistan now, about to move out over the water fairly soon. Certainly a broad system actually. Sea surface temperatures still looking good across the coast of Mexico in the Eastern Pacific, extending out to sea quite a way there as well, 32 degrees in one or two spots along the coast. In the Gulf of Mexico, also very warm, especially further west and a little bit towards the south there as well. Gulf Stream looking good off the coast of Florida, extending northeastwards, and really the Atlantic as a whole. Extremely good temperatures all across. What more can it do? We're still struggling to see any further storms. It's a little bit of a surprise to many, I would imagine, at this time of year, but it can all change very quickly. Western Pacific piping hot still. Round Shanshan it's 30 to 31 degrees Celsius. North Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal, still one or two spots there near 30 degrees as well off the coast of eastern India. Arabian Sea not quite as warm, but still 28 degrees, quite comfortable for that area of interest, which has been tagged 91A. Compared to normal, it is well above average across most of the basins. The Atlantic Ocean generally 3 degrees above average in a few spots there. In the Eastern Pacific as well, quite normal near the tropical zones thanks to these storms, but just off the Baja California coast there and around Japan and Korea, extremely warm temperatures up towards 4 or 5 degrees above average. Oceanic heat content also looks good as well, with temperatures extending down a fair way into the depths of the oceans, which certainly provides the storms with more energy. A locally high amount as well near the Amami Islands, so Shanshan is definitely benefiting from that right now. In the Atlantic, some decent amounts there, of course, across large parts of the Caribbean Sea and entering the Gulf of Mexico. If a storm takes a similar track to, say, Beryl from earlier this year, of course, Beryl itself did extremely well. Well, another storm like that could possibly do even better. Well, let's take a look at these computer models then. First of all, in the fairly sedate Eastern and Central Pacific, watching these three storms slowly die out. Hone moving off towards the west there, might get a second wind actually as it heads towards the Western Pacific. Can't rule out it actually being a Western Pacific storm at this point still. In the Central Pacific, of course, Gilmer there getting close to Hawaii. Ultimately, it looks like it's going to miss, and what's left of Hector later on, well, there'll barely be anything left to register in Hawaii by the time it gets there. Meanwhile, this is Shanshan, GFS taking it still along the western coast of Kyushu. Will that happen with that easterly jog now? I'm not sure. And then it does a little loop around the island. Look at that, a full loop, and then a second one off the west coast of Kyushu again by the time we get to the end of day 5, and it tries to strengthen back to typhoon status after weakening to a tropical storm. Looks like it succeeds as well. It's close to typhoon status the whole way around there, and there it is strengthening again at the very end of that 5-day period. Arabian Sea storm there, still hugging the coast, struggling to get out, and finally it does by the 30th, and just along the coast of Iran actually, and then eventually ending up in Oman, what's left of it, by the 1st and 2nd of September. Looking at the Bay of Bengal as well, that other system, very broad, tries to get itself together, that circulation. Often the problem trying to get those circulations together from these really broad systems over there. Looks like that's another failure, but 30% chance on that. So let's take a little look then. Obviously, with a track forecast like that from the latest GFS model run, huge amounts of uncertainty, but if it did stall around Kyushu for that amount of time, it would produce extraordinary amounts of rainfall. Over the next 7 days, it would produce, according to this forecast, up to and possibly above 50 inches of rain, which is over 1,250 millimeters, and large areas there getting above 20 inches as well, 25 inches, 500, 600 millimeters over pretty much all of the southern half of Kyushu and the eastern half as well. Well, into the Atlantic then, in the longer range, we are looking at a little system there that tries to develop. Other models like the Icon are actually more keen than the GFS at this time. GFS earlier on, like yesterday, was predicting some substantial activity. We saw that Ernesto repeat, didn't we? But now it's completely dropped that again, but it's showing a weak system moving through Cape Verde and then moving out over the central Atlantic and struggling to find its feet. Looks like it dies off. Looking at the Western Pacific again, goodness me, what will Shanshan do next? There's another system forming off to its east there as well, potentially, but Shanshan weakens a lot. It's still around as tropical storm gets thrown southwards near Okinawa, then moves west again, and look at that, strengthening once again to typhoon status. That would be a 3rd time into the East China Sea, moving westwards or possibly southwestwards. There, by the time we get to the end of day 10, it is right over there and on its way to strengthening again. Goodness me. Scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Forster Team merch store, where you can take a look at all our items as well as our full season and individual storm animations. And I don't have to say we got Waiting for Hone anymore, because we have done it for 1,775 days and you can get a lousy t-shirt for it. Well, in the long range then, the silly range now, of course, still looking at the Atlantic, but ultimately it doesn't produce very much. Just a weak signal there of a system moving into the Eastern Caribbean through Puerto Rico as well. Possibly a weak tropical storm, but really we're entering the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th of September, peak of hurricane season, and really not much going on over there in the Atlantic. We hold out hope that it's not going to be a massive season ahead of us still. Of course, we've already had 1 or 2 big hitters. Western Pacific then, looking at this, Shanshan continuing, look at that, right up to category 3 or even category 4 intensity before slamming past the northern tip of Taiwan and then off towards China, still moving southwestwards, dies off very quickly at last by that point, and then behind it, entering the stage, another storm, another substantial typhoon possibly, and there's another storm to the north there as well, affecting the Japanese islands too. So it is non-stop in the Western Pacific right now. Well, it tends to happen once a year. We look back at 2005, and of course it was the big one, Hurricane Katrina, reaching category 5 status on this day. Can you believe it's been 19 years since that fateful season? Of course, we also had Typhoon Talim, which was a category 1 at this point, and 14W, which I want to give a special mention to. It would become Typhoon Nabi, which eventually got very close through pretty much exactly where Shanshan is right now, at the same intensity as Shanshan, so a very good nowcast analog actually is what that one became. Well then, back to today. The next name in the Atlantic is Francine, certainly not keeping up with 2005 there. In the Eastern Pacific it's Ileana, and in the Central Pacific now it is of course Iona. And I'm not saying it. In the Western Pacific, the next name is still Yagi, and in the North Indian Ocean, it will be Asna. IMD did note the depression. They haven't said anything about it becoming a cyclonic storm, but I'm sure it's on the cards. And in the Southern Hemisphere, what's coming up then in the season, of course, over there opposites. So in the Australian region, season's coming up. Robin's the next name. Southwest Indian Ocean, it's Ansha, and in the South Pacific, it's Pitta. We'll be back again with another tropical weather bulletin tomorrow night.
Become an Ultimate Fan today.